Hello guys and welcome. My name is LaLand Romero. I am a visual effects artist. Today we're going to be looking at how to create a fire effect inside PopcornFX. For this tutorial we're going to start from the first steps in smoke effect tutorial. Some of the things that we're going to cover today are how to create multiple particle layers, how to set up light particles, how to use animated textures, and a texture atlas containing animated frames, and how to set up the turbulence sampler on our smoke. Let's jump right in. Okay, so let's get started by creating our light particles. Okay, all right. So let's do a couple things. In case you haven't done so, just close everything just by selecting your layer over here, and if you have the C particle render builder opened and the state is open, just make sure to close everything to keep everything nice and organized. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna double click on it on the layer. So I'm selecting my layer over here, double clicking, and I'm just gonna rename it. Right. So I'm gonna rename this smoke. Right. So that's my smoke particles. If I hide them, there you go. I'm gonna reset my particles, and I'm just gonna come over here and say, let's see, 35 particles just for now. Okay, all right, cool. Reset those particles again, maybe move them over right here just a little bit, and I'm gonna select my spawner, right click on it, new layer. All right, cool. I'm gonna double click on it right away, and I'm just gonna call this light. Okay, cool. All right, as you can see, nothing happened, right? And that is because we have to reset the particles, right? We just added a new one, and there you go. So you can see your particles there, and they are living for 2 seconds and they go away. All right, so we're emitting 10 particles, they're living for 2 seconds and they go away. All right, so what I'll do is I'm gonna select infinite, right? And you can see this, the spawn count changes right away to 10. Just for the sake of this tutorial, let's just change that to 2, right? So we're emitting 2 particles and they're infinite, right? All right. So there you go. So we have our 2 particles, and what is controlling the lights of these particles? Well, if you go to and select your spawner script, you can see that the life of these particles right now is set to 1. If I set that to something like 3, you can see those particles are living now for 3 seconds. But let's set that back to 1. Another thing that we do not need at this point is our C particle evolver physics. Since this effect is going to be static, we're not going to utilize the evolver physics. So just right click on it, delete, and there you go. So now your particles are staying in one place right there. Cool. The other thing that we want to do is we are using our C particle render builder, but for our light particles, we actually want to right click on it, right click on the renderers, and from new renderer select C particle render light. Okay, cool, and get rid of this C particle render builder. You can just press delete or right click, delete. Okay, so now nothing happened, right? And that is because our particles are like below the ground right here. So we're gonna do a few things. We are going to select our spawner script, right? And as you can see on the left hand side, inside of our node particles, right? Our node properties, I'm sorry, we have a field or attribute called position, right? So what I want to do is I want to utilize that field and say position is equals to a float 3, right? And I want to say that x is 0, y, right? If you can see over here, right? white is equal to 0.2 and 0 for Z, right? There you go. So now you can see a little bit over here. And the next thing that I want to do is I want to increase the size of my light particles to 2.25, right? And we can see our light particles over here. Now the other thing that I want to do is I want to, it seems very static. I mean, meaning it would be nice if we had a little bit of a pulse going on. So I am going to just add a random function here, and I'm gonna say that the life of the particles is between 2 and 3.0. All right. So the life of these particles is between 2 and 3 seconds. Okay. All right. Cool. Let's change the color right now. Totally white. They don't match, and when we add our fire, this is not going to work at all. So let's just do it the same way that we did it for our smoke. If I select my light fields right here, you'll see that we do not have an attribute or field called color, right? But if you go over here under your presets, right, you can just select color, right? And we have X, Y, Z, or red, green, and blue, and alpha, right? So it's a type float 4. So I'm gonna select OK. And now we have our field created, right? Let me reset those particles, maybe move them back a little bit more. And the next thing that I want to do is I want to select my state, right? And I'm going to add a new evolver, right? Just like we did it in the previous tutorial. We're just adding a curve, right, for color. So see particle evolver field, right? And it gives us a warning, right? It needs to know which field is the one that we want to utilize. And we want to say that we want to utilize color. All right, there you go. So the error went away. And the reason why we're not seeing anything on the ground is because our curve, right, with the 2 points, the first point, the position of it is at 0, and this one over here, right, with the time at 1, the position is also 0. So if I pick that up, right, you'll see that we start seeing something right there, right? So let's just play with some values in here. Let's just move this, the curve around a little bit. And what I want to do is I want to uncheck everything, and I want to select my red color over here. And I just want to give it, some reddish type of color. So let me just move this up, something like that, and get these other guys, but the alpha, and just amplify it a little bit more. Select that again. Something like that is fine for now. Okay. So before we move forward, just a little hint. If you pressed F4, right, the FX editor provides a view of internal engines deferred buffers, and in case that you guys need to debug your light, you can press F4, and then you're cycling through the different deferred buffers that PopcornFX offers to you guys. So let's just go back to our full render. There we go. And so if I select my light, we can see that we have 2 particles, and that should be enough for this. Let's take a look at inside of the renderers. Right, let's select our C particle renderer light, and as you can see up here in our billboarding material, we have we can choose between two light materials. We have our lighting splat pass and our lighting splat pass spec. We only need for this right now. We're just fine working with the lighting splat pass. The other attributes that you guys can play with, depending on the type of effects. Or for this one right now, it's you have the light intensity multiplier. So I can reduce the amount of particles, but I can bring this up to something like, let's say 3, right? That's a little bit too much. So let's just say 2 for now. And the light radius multiplier, this works as your fall off, right? So if I set this to something like 8, right, you can see we have a greater fall off right now. So let's just set this to something smaller, something like 2, and that should be fine for now. Okay, so let's move on to adding our fire, right? So let me just close all of these guys over here. I'm going to right click on the spawner one more time. I'm going to say new layer, and I'm going to double click on layer 1, and I'm going to call this fire. Okay? All right, there's a few other things that I want to do. I want to reset the particles right here. So you can see the particles right now. They're leaving for 2 seconds, just like before. But what I want to do is I want to select infinite. I have 10 particles. That's fine for now. Let's not change anything up here anymore. I want to go down here to my renderers, and I'm going to select my C particle renderer billboard, right? Just like we did for the smoke, I'm going to select up here, and I'm going to change my billboarding material, right, from additive to alpha blend additive soft. And I'm going to change my diffuse texture, so I'm just going to click over here. I'm going to go back where it says textures, and the one I'm interested in is blast pack underscore extended .dds. All right, cool. Nothing happened. Well, that is because we need our atlas definition, our text file that tells the C particle render billboard, right, how to read the sub frames that have been baked on our texture. So let's select that, ID 0, and all the way down to ID 40, right? Okay, so as you can see, we're looking at our atlas, right? And we have our texture ID right now is 0. That's every time you add an atlas definition, by default, it plays the first frame of the sub images that you have in your texture atlas. What we want to do is we want to do something a little bit different than what we did for the smoke. We do not want to play these fire textures randomly. What we want to do is we want to play from ID 0 all the way to ID 31, right? And so there's a couple ways that we can do this. The first one is we can create a one-dimensional spline or a C particle evolver, right? Right here we can just go and say new particle evolver field, right? And that will give us our curve, right? We can bind it to the field texture ID, right? And make this spline progress linearly, right, from values. So if we were to do that, right, it would be something like this, right? So here's our curve, and we will have to do something like select the whole thing, interpolator, linear, right? And as you can see, we have our value at the time 0, the position is 0, and then over here, our position will be, let's just change it, like 1, right? Time 1, our position is 1. And what that will do is, right, it will go linearly, right, from the value 0 at time 0 to 32, right, at time 1. And that way we'll, let me just delete this since we don't need it right now. And what that will do is it will read our images from 0 all the way to 31, right? But and the other way, right, is we can create an evolver. So we can just go here, right, and create a different type of evolver, right? I don't believe we created one of these in the last tutorial. We basically only worked with the spawner script, but so we can create a C particle evolver script, right, that will manually animate the texture ID field depending on the particle's life ratio, right? Okay, so let's do that, okay, for this tutorial. So let's select it, right? And if we select our C particle evolver script, you'll see that it's basically the same thing as the one that comes whenever we create an effect, right? The one that gets created by default, which is the spawner script, right? With the difference that the spawner script, right, comes with the life set to 1 and the size set to 0.25. And when we created the C particle evolver script, we just have our function, and in the body of the function, there's nothing right now, okay? Okay, so now within this C particle evolver script, we have access to life ratio, as I mentioned, right? And what is the life ratio? It's a type of float, right? And it contains the normalized particle H between 0 and 1.0. When the particle spawns, life ratio starts at 0. And when the particle dies, the life ratio equals 1. So if we want to make the texture ID, right, to progress linearly from 0, ID 0, all the way to ID 31 through the whole particle life, we just have to write something like this. So let's select the C particle evolver script, right? And you can see that up here we have our texture ID field. So if I go here, I can just say texture ID is equals to the life ratio times 32. Okay, let me just do a couple things too. All right, so we are now linearly, right, progressing from ID 0 all the way to ID 31. But let me just make some tweaks on my particles. Right now the life is set to 1. Let's just randomize this a bit. So let's go from 1.5, or like just do 1.8 to 2.5. Okay, let's set the size to 0.5, and right now the position, right, of these particles, see if we can see them through here. See, they're going below the ground, right, because they're sitting right at 0. So let's do this. Let's once again, just like we did it for the light, let's set the position to be equals to a float 3 with the values 0, 0.25, and 0. So we have 0 for X, 0.25 for Y, and then 0 for Z. Okay, Control S. Okay, cool. So now we're getting somewhere. Let's we have quite a few particles going on, and it's hard to see the animation cycling through. So let's select the fire and reduce the particle count to something like 4. All right, so that's much better. Let's go back to the C particle script. Okay, So we need to add some random, we need to rotate these particles, and we have to tweak the colors next. Okay, so we're just gonna do this the same way that we have done it in the past. The first thing I want to do is I want to select my fields right here, and under presets I'm gonna select color. Right, so now that we have it here, go down to state, right click, new evolver, and we want the C particle evolver field, right? We get the warning and we tell it that we want the color, right? Okay. So now everything is at 0, right? Once again. Now the cool thing, so let's go real quick over here to our C particle render builder, right? And the material that we have is the alpha blend additive soft, right? Now I could just easily just go over here and choose additive, but the problem with that is that we have our smoke, and our smoke is alpha blend, right? And what that will do is that it will batch poorly, right, with the smoke particles, and we're gonna get some weird sorting issues. So we are just gonna leave it with the same type of material. That way we don't get any sorting issues. But the way that we're gonna tweak the fire so that it looks more fire-like is we are going to boost the color curves above 1. All right, so let's do that real quick. So let me just select these points over here. I'm gonna lift them up right here, as you can see, and here we have it. Just go up a little bit more, and maybe move this up a little bit too. And what I'll do is I'm just going to uncheck the red one and the alpha, and just have my green and blue channels and move them down a little bit, something like that, and just take that red and push it further higher. A little bit too much, maybe something like that. Okay, and if you're not seeing what I'm seeing on the screen, just make sure to enable the pulse effect right here, right? And the one that you want to have is the HDR glow, right? Yeah, just make sure that that's the one you have selected. Whoops. There you go. Okay. Okay, so that's getting somewhere. Let's fix the tiling right now. So let's just add some rotation to our particles. So let's go here under our state, right click, new evolver, and you can see that we have the C particle evolver rotation, right? So let's change the rotation of our particles, and we are going to say that rotation is equals to a random value between -1.5 and 1.5. Semicolon, Control S, and there you go. So now they're looking a lot nicer. You know, they're rotating. They have a different orientation when they're born, and it looks a lot more dynamic. The other thing that I want to change is the fact that the particles have the same size over here. So you can see that, you know, they have the size of 0.5, right? So let's do something with this. Let's add a curve over here, and let's add in C particle evolver field again, right? We get the warning, and we just want to bind it to the size, right? At 0, we start really small. Let me add a point, Alt, left click, bring it all the way up here, and right click, interpolator, maybe make it linear. Actually, no, let's just set it back to spline. Yeah, something like that is fine for now. Okay. Okay, so another thing that we're gonna do is right now we have the fire going in the upper direction and we have our smoke going this way. So what I'll do is I'm just gonna give him the same direction where the smoke is going. So I'm gonna select the smoke particles. I'm gonna come down to the script, the spawner script, right? So I'm just gonna Control C that line right there, plus the smoke particles, and I'm gonna come down to the spawner script, and I'm just going to paste that velocity there. It might be a little bit too strong for this, but let's see what that does. Control S. Okay, so now we see our fire particles moving, but they're moving a little bit too fast. So let's just bring those values down. Okay, so I did play with some values for the fire. Let me just copy that so that you guys can see it. And these are the values that I'm utilizing for the velocity for the fire only. Okay? All right. And I can actually reduce that. So let's do something like 1. Let's do, instead of negative 1.8, let's do negative 1.2. And the same for this one here. And let's see. Yeah, let's reduce also this one. There you go. That's not too bad. Okay. Okay, so the last thing that we want to add to our overall effect, it's procedural wind turbulence. And that is something new. We didn't cover that in the previous tutorials, but in PopcornFX, you're going to see yourself, or you're going to find yourself using this a lot. And what this is this is a type of sampler. So this is the C particle sampler procedural turbulence, right? And it allows you to sample an infinite 3D noise turbulence field, right? And what that means is it allows you to fake fluid motion. So just like one of those vector fields that you can utilize inside of Unreal, or if you have worked in 3 Studio Max, once you add the wind, right, and then you play with the turbulence and with the magnitude, when you have a lot of particles, you can create this very beautiful motion in your effect. It's like, like flowing through a turbulence medium. That's basically what we're going to do. Okay, so let's go ahead and close the fire, select the smoke, and right here where it says samplers, just right click on it and say new sampler, and you'll have the C particle sampler procedural turbulence. Select it, and you can give it a name, or you can just leave it with the default name, which is turb_0, right? And if I were to select the C particle evolver physics, right, there is something over here called velocity field sampler, right? So this right here, this field is expecting a sampler. So now that we created one, right, I can just enter that name in here and say turb, right, _0. And so now let's go back over here to our, or just something to be aware too. it's that the drag is set to 0, right? By default, the drag gets set to 0 every time you create a new C particle of vulvar physics, and it's set to 0, right? So right now, if I were to select my my turbulence over here, and I increase the strength to something like 20, nothing's gonna happen. So just keep in mind that if you want to affect your effect with any type of turbulence, sampler turbulence, make sure that your C particle over physics, that the drag is set to 0.2 or 0.1. So if I go back up here and set that to something like, I don't know, 50, just to illustrate the point, you can see how this noise over here is affecting, or 3D noise is affecting the behavior of our smoke. So let's do something like 8, right? So yeah, that's our effect. If you want, you can continue, tweaking these further. Let's see, so that's the smoke. Let me just go back to the fire, and I just want to bring that color a little higher. That's a little bit too much. Actually, the alpha, I can just bring the alpha down. Let me just uncheck all of these. That alpha can stay right where it is right now, since the particles are just fading at the very end. They have an animated fade on them. They can just stay. Yeah, something like that is a lot better. And for intensity, I can even just move this up if I wanted to, just to make it really incandescent. Maybe that's a little bit too much. Okay guys, so I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial, the fire tutorial. We looked at how to create multiple particle layers, how to set up our light particles. We use animated textures and a texture atlas containing different animated frames, a little bit different than the approach that we use for the smoke. And the very last part was how to set up the turbulence sampler. So hopefully you guys can make some really cool stuff with PopcornFX. And again, my name is LaLand Romero. I will see you guys next time. Thank you.